Welcome to Homeschooling Homegirls. I'm Tiffany. So today we're kicking it with my husband, George. We have raised three always unschooled kids. They are 23, 17, and the youngest one's 9. I have a list of 21 questions that I have not ran by him before this, so they're going to be authentically his answers.
Join us for this episode. Let's get into it.
This is our 8th episode of Homeschooling Homegirls podcast, but the first vlog version. So leave comments below, let us know how we do, and I'll post his social media and website in the show notes. So today we're going to cover like a dad's Q&A and a little bit of a marriage Q&A. Question number 1. How long have we been unschooling?
Our journey began as soon as we met, and our daughter was 4. So I had very little input up until that time. So together, I'd say we started right about 19 years.
Question number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Why did we decide to homeschool or unschool? Do you remember?
I do remember, I thought public school was the way and the only way. So I really wanted to emphasize that I wanted our daughter to be in the public school system.
George met me with the 4-year-old. And for that first year, she was at a community college daycare program that was ran like I had never seen anything before. It was the closest to Montessori with Waldorf kind of. They had animals and it was a lot of art, and Jade's really creative. And then 5 years, she's 5 and they wanted her in kindergarten. And so we found a Montessori school. And George, even at the time, was like, well, what the hell's Montessori? And he would take her and he would drop her off and pick her up, and she would still be at the gate. And I thought it was a great program, multi-language, very art driven, but it was the worst decision we ever made. And so then after that, he decided that she needed to go to kindergarten. And I was really against it, but we were both working full time.
Yeah.
And so I told him if he wanted her to go to kindergarten, that he would have to get her ready, do her lunch, do her hair. And at the time she has a lot of hair, but she had a long, she had hair to her waist.
Yeah.
Right. And so he had to detangle it and send it. And so anyways, he got her all ready. This little girl that was always covered in paint and barely any clothes on was now in a buttoned up uniform with a skirt and long sleeves, and he put her hair in a ponytail that was like on the side of her head.
Hey, I tried. I got better.
Anyways, it lasted 2 days because he saw how our wild child was kind of conforming.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we got to like homeschooling and schooling. It was like he needed to process it out, and I needed to let that happen, even though it was like everything was screaming inside me not to let my kid go to public school.
Yeah, no, definitely. Unfortunately, she was my guinea pig. Really, I saw right away that it just wasn't. It wasn't for her. I mean, just talking to her and asking her how her day was. And I think once I personally saw that, I knew there had to be a better way, a different way.
So, were you in the beginning on board with homeschooling or unschooling?
Not at the beginning, no. I knew one way, and I knew what I thought was the only way. Which I thought homeschooling worked for other people that had, it's a lifestyle change, really. Homeschooling, it's a different lifestyle. I just thought it didn't fit our lifestyle. It's you got 2 working parents. You do things with dual incomes. It's hard to be able to, when you're coming up and you're 21 years old, 22 years old, and you're trying to figure things out. One way.
Oh, that's a good thing to bring up. Yeah, we were 21 with a 5-year-old, and so we were a lot younger than most parents anywhere we went. Okay, so do you remember? Do you remember going to that Unitarian church where we first heard about unschooling?
I do, yes.
Like right in the beginning, right when we found out like school wasn't going to work.
Oh yeah, that was memorable in the sense that I was scared. I thought Tiffany was taking me to join a cult or something like I was like, they're gonna make us drink this thing at the end, and we're all gonna join, and we're gonna sing a song, and we're all gonna unite. That was, it was interesting because I mean, I was catching maybe 30% of the information that was coming at me. And, my mental block is like, no, okay, I'm trying to be open, but what is this? I don't get it. I don't
Can you describe
understand.
what it was like when we first got there?
I don't remember if we were all sitting in a circle, if we were all sitting kind of in these little chairs, like little kids, and we're ready to be blessed or something. It was like I it was just really weird for me. It just information was coming at me at 100 miles per hour, and I was just trying to do my best to field it and take what I can. Tiffany was super excited, that even we were even considering this. So I was trying to be there for her and trying to be there for the benefit of our daughter, just to see a different way, a better way.
What was can you remember maybe your first or your most, I don't know, whatever sticks in your mind of the reservation you might have had with it,
Uh,
the reservation to not homeschool or unschool?
I just lack of knowledge and lack of experience. Am I going to be qualified to be able to do this or facilitate this or do my part in this? I just didn't know where I would fit in the process, and yeah, it was scary. I was scared.
So there's 6 years between our oldest and then our second, and then so did your reservations change? What were your reservations with Dylan?
You know,
Homeschooling or unschooling Dylan? We unschooled him.
with Dylan, I felt like I think you're always scared with your first. You're a little bit more comfortable with your second. By the third, you're do what you
Can
want.
he paste?
I was third in my family, so yeah, I had a little bit more freedom in my life. But I think with Dylan, I think I had a little bit better expectation. I mean, Jade was only 6 at the time, so I think just seeing how things were processing for Jade. Still, obviously, only maybe a year or two fresh into the process. I still wasn't 100% comfortable, but I think as Dylan came more of age and I saw the progression with Jade, it just you base everything on progress, and there's no you see other kids and there's no level of there's no grade level, there's no test, you don't know how they're doing, so you just have to really trust the process. And I think as Jade matured, and I think it was right about maybe 10 or 11 where I felt that we were on the right path. And of course that made it just so uh, natural when Dylan came to 5, 6 that it was definitely the decision, a great decision.
I remember you having so it sounds like a lot of time, like 5 years into it, where then Dylan is now school age. So we had 5 years with Jade, and I guess we should be very clear. We didn't do any curriculum. We didn't do any testing. There was no this is math and this is science. We basically lived our life. I was still working, he was still working, and Jade cooked a lot. She baked a lot. She made she's our artistic kid. She's always creating. So there was no bedtime. There was no structure. And so that's what I think he's alluded to when he says there was no we jumped in with both. We jumped in head first, before there was any water. And I think he kind of just trusted me. I don't know if that's because she was my kid first and he kind of just thought I knew what I was doing. But I know that when we had Dylan and it was oh, they don't come already potty trained and a whole person. and he got all the first with Dylan in a sense. Like I know that one of the issues I remember was like Dylan didn't read until he was like
9 or 10.
9 or 10. Yeah. I mean, he was gaming at 8, 7, 8. And it was a lot of us reading to him, like what the comments were or trying to help him. But I know that that was hard when okay, we'll get there. But I know that that was like a huge one.
Yeah. I mean, that was seeing that process play out, but then seeing how it just came to them like walking. I think in one of the dad's conferences, like somebody brought it up very well. Was like, we don't teach our kids to walk. They they watch, they learn, they pick it up, and they just do it, right. And reading for me, I think as a young kid was it was pushed hard in public school. So the fact that my children were able to pick it up and do it because they loved it rather than that they had to, I think it gives them more want to read. They enjoy it.
Okay, so this question's going to change from the beginning, I think, with each kid, because your role has changed with each kid. So, what role do you play in our unschooling life?
Facilitator, financer.
I think in the beginning, you were like the only dad at park days.
Yeah. No, I was, in my line of work, I had more flexibility to be able to, drop in on a park day and really hang out with the kids. Seeing the kids, in all their glory. Having a good time, enjoying life. Just taking in the sun, and that to me is just that's true living right there. So they were experiencing all the best things of life. Just being around people that they enjoyed being around, and we met some very, very cool people along the way. So
he was like the Peter Pan dad.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they used to call him. They used to say, "Are you Peter Pan or are you Hook?" So if he was Hook, it's because he was working. And if he was Peter Pan, he was going to go be like the biggest kid on the playground or the biggest instigator on the playground, getting them to go try stuff. Like who could jump across things or who could. One park day, the kids tied him up and like literally took those like Crayola markers and like tattooed like his face, his arms. He was like the biggest
long time
kid.
ago. I think it's a little more.
Okay, so now like how is your role change? So that was like more with like Jade and Dylan.
Mm-hmm.
And like with Logan, like how is your role changed? Like what's your role look like with him?
I think my role with him is he's a little bit more, he loves sports, he loves competition, he loves doing that. I think that brings that aspect out of me where I'm like sports. I mean, we'll just go, we'll play baseball, and he gets frustrated when he's not 100% great at something, and I tell him that's something you're gonna have to work at. I think with him, just because he is the third child, I tend to I always been obviously with him. I tend to work him a little bit more, just not let in so easy. I kind of
it's his personality too.
It is his personality.
He's the kid.
Yeah.
Like each of our kids are really different. Jade she would have done fine in school. She's like the go with the flow, very creative. I know one of the biggest questions we get is like, aren't you scared of them being like the weird homeschooled kid? Jade would have been the weird kid at school. Like and there's nothing wrong with being weird. I think Jade was just very not Jade wanted to talk about like art and jazz and current events, and she was a big reader, but not so much big on people, and neither am I. I'm not a people person. I mean, I played the game in school because that was my choice, but like she's quiet. She still likes one or two people. Dylan is our social kid. Like that kid, we were busy all the time pre-COVID. He fits in everywhere. Logan is our difficult one. Like our kid that we know that like from right off the bat, there's certain things that we needed to um, guide a little bit more with him. You know, he is the kid that is most like me. I think Dylan is the kid that's kind of has the best of us, and I think Jade is a lot like George in the sense of like personality. But she's me like with people, and Dylan is more like George with people. George is a really good people person. Like he's the guy who's gonna know everybody in the room by the time we leave a space. So I think knowing who your kid is really affects the way I think we've homeschooled or unschooled, like the guidance wise, like you
Yeah.
said with Logan, like Jada needed Jada wanted a little less input than any of our kids, I think.
Yeah.
And
Exactly.
Dylan is he'll try anything once, you know, he's a very caring person, and so his emotions guide him a lot. And Logan is hell or high water, he's going to do what the hell he wants.
Yeah.
And he's not going to do what he doesn't want. So you just our homeschooling or unschooling has adjusted for each kid. It's looked different a little bit, and they're all there's 6 years between Jade and Dylan, and there's 8 years between Dylan and Logan, and there's 15 years between Jade and Logan. So we've also had like time gaps to be able to like look at things and kind of redo them a little different. Okay, so what do you think? Oh, this is a question. What do you think unschooling has done for your relationship with your kids?
I honestly, I get compliments from my brother whose children are in traditional school, and he's always really loved the relationship that we have with our kids. I mean, I can talk to them about anything and everything. And as they get older, I mean, there are times when it's, maybe a little harder to connect. Obviously, easy when they're little because it's all fun and games. And then as they get older, more serious conversations are had or not had. But, I feel like I could be more open and honest with them when it comes to uh, things that they see. I mean, life comes at you in so many different ways, and I think it's you can be a little bit more yourself around them. You don't have to hide as much. They
I
see
think it's
everything.
kind of hard to hide because they're around us all the
Yeah,
time.
right. They know they get. I mean, if they can tell they can really tell by you saying something or not saying something, or you or the way you say it. It's just like they read you so well, and you kind of read them as well. So I mean, there's definitely that closeness, where you're around someone so much,
We were raised very differently than the way we're raising our kids. And like, there's some times where like our kids say something and other people might think it's rude or it's just super direct. And I am always like, God, they like trust us to be able to say stuff like that because like there's no way in hell I would have said that to my parents.
yeah,
Or,
yeah, right, yeah.
or joke around like that, or just be real. It just wasn't done. And so like the fact that our kids kind of have that, I feel like a friendship parent. There's not like I'm the parent. I know some people are like, I'm not my kid's friend, but like, I don't know, to us, they were around us all the time.
I mean, there's a true relationship there.
Yeah, right. It's not just
Genuine.
it's just I don't know. So yeah, I think that. Okay. Did you ever struggle or do you struggle to tell friends or coworkers that we unschool? Like, or when it's brought up, or like the question is, where do your kids go to school? Or like if they ask the kids, I know our kids' answers have been like, oh, I don't go to school.
Or what grade are you in?
Oh, yeah, what grade are you in? They're looking at us.
That was always a big one. Yeah, I think at the very beginning, I didn't know how to answer that. I mean, I didn't necessarily say our kids don't go to school, but I I would just kind of not engage in that conversation or avoid that conversation or change the subject in that conversation. It's like, oh yeah, look at that. Yeah. So there wasn't a lot of deep conversations. Now where it's different, I feel like obviously having the experience and having the confidence now, um, it's it's way different. I think at the very beginning, yeah, very difficult conversation where I think it's also more socially acceptable now, so that it's not as weird or awkward to start a conversation. I think more or less, we have people coming back and asking, "Oh, hey, how is that? How is that working out for you?" Or people that are more interested in you know in the process now and into homeschooling. They have questions, and I obviously field everything over to Tiffany, but um, no, it's a lot easier or better conversation for me to have now than it was at the very very beginning. So
Okay. So this is kind of ties into that. How do the people that raised you, your parents
mhm.
or your siblings, describe how we educate our kids? Like, has they ever asked you, or do they ever, I don't know, has that ever been a thing?
um, I think I've had more real conversations with my uh, second oldest brother in regards to uh, how it's worked for them. And I think it's not something we really openly talk about. I think they gauged our success or process by our relationship with them. It kind of goes back to that relationship, how they see how it's maybe different. And yeah, I get compliments on how different that is. From an educational standpoint, not really a whole lot of deep conversations, I think, in regards to, I mean, it's not like they every time we get at a family function, they've got like 10 questions that our kids have to answer or anything, they just,
I think it's different when they were little. I think when they were little, uh, there was maybe like not maybe the adults, but the kids, like asking questions. It was like the cousins, I think, asking
yeah, it
sometimes,
was more
like, do you
like,
know how to do this? Do you know what this times this is? Do you
I,
like the quizzing?
yeah, it was more like their grade level kind of cousins that were just kind of, I mean, our kids are, older in some cases than on my side of the family, but on your side of the
Oh
family, I
yeah.
think they're more age, you know, kind of age level or grade level. So it definitely came from that side of the family where it was like
Oh, that's true because
there was that time where I think one of our kids or both of our kids were asked, where they go to school and I think my daughter's answer was always, so we don't go to school. And then what was it? I think they said something like, "Oh, well, then you must not be very smart then." And yeah, I was like, you know, and I think they just stopped talking to them. Like, "Oh, okay, then we should
well,
probably."
I think that they caught him off guard. They were like, why would they assume that you weren't smart? I think it was a very different um our kids never equated learning with school, and for their cousins, that's how you learn is you go to school.
Right.
And I think that conversation we had never really prepared them for that, because I think we prepared them to deal with adults but not their cousins or kids their age. And I think that was like a blind spot of ours, I don't
Yeah.
know, or mine. And so like it was like, why would they, why would they tell us that, or why would they say that? um and it was just, it would become a difference. And then there's other things, like when they would be like, oh well, we don't have a media restriction, we've never had media or internet usage or gaming restrictions, so our kids were playing, Dylan would call it chigaboom, like the shooter games, first person shooter games at a very young, like he would sit on his lap and play, where their cousins weren't maybe allowed, or they were watching movies that were PG-13 or whatever. And there was never, um, there was, so there was other things like that. Like, I think that would go where like, how can you do that? Or you guys don't have rules. Our kids would be like, what are, like, we didn't use context like that. Like, these are our roles. We didn't use those words.
Right.
So or they would cuss sometimes because we cuss, especially our 9-year-olds. And so they're like, oh, that's a bad word. And then our kids would be like, well, why is it bad? Like what makes it bad? Like I wasn't saying it at you, or I wasn't, and so I think a lot of those conversations have happened.
Right.
But yeah, then there's a lot of us who are like, oh yeah, we're in our bubble. I think do you feel like that? Like the unschooling, homeschooling bubble can be like a very different space sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, now more with the times, more bubbles are created, but yeah, I think yeah, there's always that kind of exposure safety net, right? They're they experience everything within our realm, and then outside of that, they yeah, it could be different or
Well, I think like norms, things that are like standard, like kids should behave like this or shouldn't behave like
yeah,
that. Like we were like, no, they're people. I that's what drove me to unschool Jade was that I believe people are born the way who they're meant to be. And I think it's us or society that tells them who they should or shouldn't be and what's good or bad or
and experiences, obviously.
right.
Yeah,
And I think that the more we could let them rule their own lives, like the less stuff they have to heal from or the less things they have to question about themselves. And so it's not perfect. Like I know I've messed up a lot these last 20 years almost. Um, but I noticed that bubble that I'm talking about is that we didn't we're not religious, like we didn't homeschool for Jesus and we didn't um nor were our kids raised that way. And so I think that we weren't trying to protect, I guess that's what I'm saying. We weren't trying to protect them. I don't think you were either, right? Like
no, it's just
I
kind of
don't I think that was one of your biggest issues though. Like you didn't want them. He still knows people he went to like elementary school with and high school with um and I think you were kind of scared that our kids wouldn't have that.
yeah. I think it was just I mean, I built a lot of relationships going to school, and I felt that that the children would be limited by not having that social interaction. And I think a lot of the times, right, that we were always asked the questions of how are your kids going to socialize, like as if we were going to build or help create these antisocial people in the world where they never spoke or they or they had a different language or something. I don't know. As you talk to our children, and I think my dad put it best when he was like, you know, my our youngest was with him for like maybe 5 minutes, and he said he never stops talking. You're right. He's very talkative. He always has questions, and um, and I think our kids carry conversation very well and are very social.
And I think because they're used to doing it with adults primarily. I mean, adults, my siblings, so there's 8 years difference between my youngest sister and my daughter, and 6 years between my youngest brother and Jade. So Jade was always around kids 6 to 8 years older, teenagers, and then mostly around adults. And she
Mhm.
preferred adults, and she's still like that. Dylan was the kid that like needed people all the time. So that meant, which was hard for me because that's just not my thing. um, I prefer to be a book and like I don't do well with small talk, so I'd rather have like deep conversations or be doing something, learning something while I'm doing something. And Dylan was the kid that needed people 24/7. So park days were his thing, and George really helped me with that because he's the people person. So he would get me out of my. I'm introverted and he's extroverted. Um, with Logan, he's kind of in the middle. Like he likes people for like 30 minutes, and then
Mhm.
or if he's not the alpha, he doesn't want to be there. And those are the things I'm saying where you like you got to know your kid, and so like it's a balance between knowing like it's not his world all the time, but also not putting them in situations that we know that um aren't going to build the best character. I don't know. Maybe that's just the best way of me saying it.
Yeah, and I think we help kind of guide, not drive, but guide.
Mhm.
Kind of, we know how he could react. I mean, it is just knowing your kid, right? And
It's
how
just
he's
being careful, like not putting him in a bubble, but also not letting him either hurt other people's feelings because he has a mouth on him, like he's still my kid. So it's just kind of that in between. What are the benefits of unschooling
I think the benefits are just
that you've seen with our kids?
really just letting them experience things for themselves. I think we have to you still have to help, obviously, present you things, be like, hey, how's this? Or maybe they're into something for like 2 minutes and they're on to the next thing and you're still invested in it, and you just have to okay, well, I just bought $150 worth of stuff. I'm just gonna leave that over there now.
They come back to it
I
eventually,
think
or
that,
another kid will pick it
or
up.
somebody else might pick it up, right? Or I might just keep doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just, that's it, right? I mean, all the things that I've ever picked up and done because I like it. I've enjoyed. I continue to do it, and it's just like, I've made a career in it, something like that. So, um, I think it's just, it's really driven by that passion for them to want to pursue things, and I love that. It always comes back to that, that want to discover, that need to discover. I think I talk about all the time. I used to ask my dad, "Hey, what's down that road?" And I'd have to say nothing, and that would be the end of it, right? Where my kids would be like, "Oh, what's down this, what's down this path?" Or and I'd say, "Well, let's go find out." And I think it's just being that open to finding out. That's
And
the
we talk
difference.
about our like we just went hiking, and that was like a conversation. Like George was like, "Well, what's over there? What's over there?" And like we're going off the path, and the kids were like, and I'm like, it's those things that are still in us as kids, like the things we heal from, we do with our kids, I think, and then we talk about it with our kids because I think it's important for our kids to know why we do certain things. Um, and it helps again build that relationship of like it's not all about. I think that's one thing I learned the most is like this homeschooling or this unschooling journey has not been 100% about the kids. It's about like us as kids.
Oh yeah,
like we've
right.
gotten to like heal a lot of our childhood stuff and learn, and like you said, like how he supports us, our business, like we went, I think unschooling drove us into like creating a business because we wanted more time
Right.
and more money to be able to do things, and like it took us away from like the security of like a 9 to 5 job. um and I think like the leap we took was because we were leaping and watching our kids like just enjoy doing things and living. Like it became our joy, I think. I don't know, is that
Yeah, no,
how
I
you feel?
definitely feel that way.
So what are the drawbacks you see about unschooling,
Uh,
or what have been our drawbacks?
I think the drawbacks are, there are certain things that in life I feel that do have a certain level of discipline, you know, um, process. I think, where it's, I think there's a place for it, and I love the spontaneity of how unschooling is. If we want to take a road trip and experience something cool, but yeah, I think definitely it's that discipline and process where it's not really at the forefront. There are things that do require that in life and in how things function. So uh
Be
I
honest though. I want you to be like really, really just honest. Like, is there an example like you can think of like what a drawback is you've seen?
uh I think with you try to build as much confidence as you can with your kids, by uh, providing positive feedback and a level of acceptance. I think we encourage failure, uh, but when the child doesn't want to try for the fear of failing, and there's that level of did I do something wrong, or is that just the way my child is in the process? I think I take that personally just because of the fact that we are both you know encouraged to try things. I mean, I'm more fearful I think than you, and I think fear gets in the way of us a lot of the times. But yeah, just I when they don't want to try, or they don't want to continue on because maybe something is hard, is sometimes difficult for me to just let go. um, just I think the process, letting that process just kind of die out is a problem for me. I encourage them to kind of keep going, but when they're done, they're done. I think that's one area where I wish I had better tools to be able to provide them,
I think, yeah, I think every parent, whether your kid's in school or not, struggles. Like, I think that's a personality to an extent. Um, like if you even go to the welcoming episode, the first one, I talk about how I drank all the unschooling Kool-Aid from a colonized perspective. And I think we made different decisions. Like when I say we had no rules, like we could have had boundaries or guidelines that I think we have now with our youngest, but maybe our oldest too didn't have. So it was like a harder curve for them because there was really like, it was 100% always finding the yes, always about them, always doing things that maybe didn't feel right to our gut, but like, that's what you said, right? That's what all the expert says. You always got to find the yes and do, yeah, it was whatever. And I really think that impacted our kids and us, our decisions to never make the hard, like we fixed all the hard things. Like I know I did that with my oldest. Like I never made anything hard. If there was something hard, I got in the way and made it easier. I've learned that, like, especially the last one, like hard things aren't bad.
mm-hmm.
And I think that sometimes when you treat your kids like they're glass and you have to make sure that everything's safe, we weren't raised in a very safe environment also. So we try to do all the things to make them never have to not feel safe. And there's great things in that, but there's also like risks that you don't take or aren't given.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to be learned from struggle.
Yeah, like I think who we are as people have a lot to do with struggle.
Mhm.
And of course, you want your kids to have like the childhood you never had. And so we wouldn't push. We wouldn't, there was a hard point of knowing when to push, when not to push. So then we didn't. And we just tried to like make it all great and beautiful and like a rainbow. And life doesn't work that way. And so I totally get that. Like the hard things. It, the failing out loud, like whether, I mean, I think the only thing I've done really is to fail in front of my kids a lot, and try things. Like I try things all the time, like he'll say,
Yeah,
like I'll jump head in, I get an idea and I want to go try
a
it,
lot.
like this podcast. um and they've seen me pick up and drop things like 1,000 times, and we just had this conversation. We just got this game. It's called Skin Deep, or card game. And so we've been doing this. We got the family, I got all of them, but we were doing the family edition. And one of the things where, one of the questions were, who are you most like in the family and who are you the most not like in the family, like different from? And my son's response was really eye-opening for me, because all the things I see in me as maybe not thinking things through or jumping head first, like he sees that as such a strength that he wished he had. And I was like, well, nobody's ever told me that. I've always been the most difficult, hard-headed, stubborn person that maybe doesn't always think things through, and I make things difficult for people. But he saw that as like a strength. And that's what I'm talking about. Like, whereas parents, you might think if we could have, should have, would have done stuff, but like they're gonna find, as much as we made the bubble, like they still found the hard things. They still got through them. They just look very different from the way we would have maybe handled it, or the way we would have considered what they consider hard is like, well, we look at each other like, what? Why is that hard? Um, but it's hard for them, or it's difficult for them. And I think that's one thing we've had to not beat ourselves up on.
I think we just have to adjust our perspective.
Yeah, there you
because
go.
we're looking at things from a different angle on a different space, and it's their space.
Right. What did your support system look like when you got it? When you felt like you weren't just going along? Because I think for a long time you were just kind of seeing and going along for the ride with me. Like, one, I'm stubborn, so a lot of people always tell me like it's just easier to give me my way than to have to deal with me. And I think for a long time it was like, okay, they're little, it's fine, it's working. And then they got to be where like Dylan was getting a little older, and you were kind of like, he wasn't reading, and it looked like he was just like, you would come home and there would either be like Jade's art projects all over the place, and Dylan was either gaming, or Dylan lived in like Fantasyland. Like he was my creative kid. I really thought he was gonna be like a movie director or something. Everything always had movement. and he was always creating. But nothing looked like school. Like it didn't look like what you would think of, like this is history and this is math and this is, and so you were kind of at your wits end. Do you remember like when you felt differently?
I think it was. I think it was actually one of the conferences I went to on my own, actually, with Jada and Dylan. It was one of those conferences where,
Oh, I remember that
yeah,
conference.
yeah,
Okay, so at that point we were only going to unschooling conference. Like anything that had to do with homeschool, I was like, I don't homeschool, so I didn't want to. But Dylan, I'm telling you, my kid at a park day, all their friends went to the HSC homeschool conference. And I had never wanted to go because I'm like, I don't want to talk about curriculum and I'm not going to talk about. I thought that homeschoolers were like religious, and I just had a very closed minded perspective on who homeschoolers were versus who unschoolers were. And um, if you can't tell, I'm like anti establishment. I'm like, free thinkers. And I thought homeschoolers were like the Duggars or something. And we had just had our son, our last kid. And I just didn't want to go. So George took him to this conference. He took the older two to homeschool conference in Sacramento.
yeah, yeah. That was so. I think that was the first time where I was kind of obviously on my own to figure things out, to get the lay of the land. Obviously, she couldn't give me any insight on to what to expect. It was just more or less, if you want to take them, then you take them. So I think at that point, I was kind of opened up to the process. I got to meet a lot of interesting people, and I got to see how my kids interacted with others and how they connected, and it was very cool just to kind of be there and experience things, you know, for myself or by myself for the first time. So mom, send your husband to a conference by himself. That's how it does. It's it's
I think there's a lot of like interference. Like if you don't, because I never ever conference before that, I'd be like, here's the schedule, take one kid to whatever thing. And like, you were more like, you weren't attending talks or anything. You were kind of just going with the flow,
I
like
was
hanging
I,
out.
I was going with the flow. I mean, there were a lot of outdoors type activities with this particular one, which made it fun for me because I mean, I could interact differently than just sitting in a chair and watching or listening. Um, this was more interactive for me, which I think um, made it so much better and so much, how that's how I was able to meet people. And um,
So it happened. They have like the Suds talks, like Secret Society of Unschooling Dads, and it's a bunch of dads that show up with
that was
like
cool.
their drinks, and or not drinks, their sodas or whatever it is that they're gonna drink, and they just get real, like, and it now it's open to like not just dads but the other parent, and like maybe the parent that like is not 100% like, okay, what's the,
Maybe role.
yeah,
Maybe.
like we all have different roles. Like the parent who's not the primary, they're responsible for taking care of the homeschooling stuff. So do you remember what he's told you, or like what
Um,
was said that like helped you get it?
I think for me it was just there's just that ease. Actually talking to well, one or some of the dads, and it was just trusting the process was kind of thing, where it was just like it was at that time when it was just like I just need to relax. Those fears that I had
Hmm.
were valid, but they're your fears, not yeah, that's it's just it's in your head. Just let it go. I think, and I think from an experience, um, homeschooling dad, to hear that and to see their kids just really be, I think really just gave me peace of mind.
I think sometimes you have to hear it from someone who's been there.
Yeah, no, definitely that just having that just having that level of confidence, I think was also reassuring. Just like It's okay, man. You're okay. You're gonna be okay. Your kids are gonna be okay. Everything's gonna be okay.
Well, I think too that
Yeah.
they share kind of when you hear somebody else say that you're having a similar issue, then you're not the only one. It's not like you did something wrong, or there's like, oh, okay, it's a process. Like learning styles, people learn differently, and I I don't know, as a parent, I know for me, like when I hear like me and my daughter are very different people, and when I hear somebody else talk about certain things, I'm like, oh, okay, like I didn't grow up 100%. Like it was like, we're just different people process different things, but you don't know how other people process it unless you hear somebody say it,
Right.
I
Yeah.
think. Or for me, that's been my experience. All right. Um, okay. What are the questions you get asked the most when people find out that you unschool?
What's that like? I think is the question I get. So um, I think it's and the easiest way I put it is like it's you know lots of field trips. It's lots of experiences. It's lots of exposure to new things. It is. I mean, it really for us. It's I think we've learned so much out of those experiences that we've had, those journeys that we've taken. Where I'd say it's a road trip to a different state, or um, it's a trip to some place we've never been before, and that's I I tell them it's a journey and it's an experience, and it's a cool ride.
It's been different with COVID, huh? Like
Yeah.
the way we've unschooled our older two. And I think this is why we're, I think, trying to homeschool a little differently. I guess more homeschool than unschool with Logan is that the world like outside used to be our classroom, like our
Mhm.
how we learn things. Somebody was into glass blowing, and we would go to a place that does glass blowing. If somebody was into wanting to know about animal rescue, we'd go to a place like that.
Wait, what is that when they were making that horseshoes or the steel,
Oh yeah,
the mill
they got into
millwork?
mill work, and
Yeah,
they
that was
wanted to
cool.
do it, and so we found classes, or we found somebody that knew how to do it or had access to tools.
Mhm.
But now with COVID, I think that's all gone out the window. Like we still go hiking and we still go try to do things outdoors, but the whole learning from other people aspect has been more digital. YouTube, Khan Academy. And I think that not having the people aspect is it's really hard, because I think you might be interested, but sometimes I've seen the kids get really, it's somebody else's enthusiasm into being interested in what they're interested in, right? Like I don't know,
Yeah.
they catch it. But like Dylan's really into programming and tech stuff, and that's totally him. So there's a sometimes George has taken him to offices or businesses, and where he gets hands-on stuff, or experience. And um, I think I'm seeing Logan learn different because he's not having access to the outside world right now. Um, so that yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
That's been a huge difference. Um, okay. After raising almost two always unschooled kids, what do you think about our choice?
Honestly, I'm grateful that we were able to have the opportunity to do this. I think it's you know it's something I know that we're privileged to do in our children's lives, and in our lives personally. Um, so I think it's just it's a journey. I'm glad we've gone on, and we've taken, and we're able to still continue on. It's definitely worth it.
Has unschooling affected our marriage?
I think at the beginning it was all about Jade for you, and I think that was one of those things where I try to express my concerns with that kind of mentality, that philosophy. It was just I'm like, well, if it's all about her. Where do we fit in, right? Um, and I think it took a few years for us to kind of get to the point. I remember actually going to it was a homeschooling or unschooling conference, and
In San Diego.
in San Diego.
Yeah.
And that was one of those aha moments for me where um, I think it was listening to a couple, an experienced couple, uh, that they were talking about marriage. And this particular one was, I think it was a really, really good one for me to hear because it didn't make sense to me at that moment, but it made sense later, and it all hit later, where um, it was about focusing on the relationship, and it was about know that you're going to hit a rough patch. Doesn't matter how healthy or how strong your relationship or your marriage is. You're gonna hit some spots. It's not always rainbows and sunshine. So um,
I remember how arrogant we were.
oh, yeah.
Everybody was talking in a circle about all their marriage things, and we were the youngest people in that room.
Yeah, right.
Probably the oldest kid.
What do you
Right.
know?
And we were like, that is never going to be us. Like, we are still young and in love, and we're never going to get to the place where we're like can't stand each other or feel so far apart or neglected, and just like, and they were talking about is when it homeschooling and unschooling can consume your entire life, especially if you have multiple kids. You're driving one there, you're picking one up, somebody's having an issue with somebody, you're trying to stay in a homeschool community, and you're trying to navigate friendships, and you're trying to like keep all the moving pieces. And if you're working, or struggling to pay bills, like all these things happen, and then you become like the back burner, right? Like, I'll get to you, your relationship, you'll get to, and then the getting to just isn't, it creates issues, and you feel neglected or not seen, or other people come into the picture that make you feel better, or all these things that we said would never be us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly.
Right?
That's it. Yeah, that was, and that was it. And I think
it became us.
Yeah, no, and I was able to actually reach out to that couple and later, and really just tell them that how grateful I was for that information, though I wasn't grateful at the time. That I'm grateful now, just because of the fact that it's not something I wanted to hear, but something I needed to hear, and definitely something I hope reaches somebody through this, that you're not alone. I mean, you're gonna have issues, you're gonna have disagreements, you're gonna have moments where you're just so
Well, I think like you felt like, from what you told me, like neglected in the sense of like, we had all these fun experiences that you paid for and you weren't a part of. So we would come back with these stories and experiences, and or like we would send our kids off to like unschooling camp, or not back to school, like to go travel around New Zealand, or to, I don't know. And we had all these inside jokes and all these conversations that you were like not, we didn't do a good job of like including you in them. And so like the prioritizing of our marriage, I don't think like kind of fell into that, like resentment maybe. And then too, like I nursed like each kid like for 3 years, and they're far apart in age. So like, when you nurse a lot, you're like touched out. I don't think I was affectionate, because I was like, at the end of the day, after dealing with like 3 kids, one in teenage land, one in like kid land, and one in baby land, like there's no more energy left. And I think like, instead of prioritizing time with you or doing that, like I don't think we were great at that.
Yeah, no, I definitely don't think we set time for us.
Yeah, there was like no
there
date
was
nights.
nothing. Yeah,
There was it was just basically getting through it.
yeah, I think we're I mean, there's living and there's survival mode, and we're just constantly trying to make sure that everyone's needs are getting met but our own, and that is hard, and I think we've been able to kind of create more of a balance now where we can, we have our own interests, we have our own
Oh, that was a
wants.
huge thing.
Yeah.
Like there was no individualized like doing our own thing.
No, never was.
There was like the kids, in the business.
Mm-hmm.
And then us, but like there was no me doing friend stuff and you doing friend stuff. Like there was a lot of insecurity around that, I think.
Yeah, I think I mean, the kids were the world, and that's where we lived. So we didn't have a lot of relationships outside of that. So yeah, I mean, that did cause a lot of friction, but I think we we've really grown a lot from that and learned a lot from that. And like you said, that was a struggle that we went through.
I think that's how unschooling, I think for us in our marriage, like we weren't, you could see where you weren't applying the philosophy, like of, like we gave our kids, like, let them be who they are and let them do what they want. But we didn't necessarily give that to each other.
Yeah.
And you can see the difference of relationship when you were allowing somebody to be their whole selves and then still expecting someone to be what you wanted, not necessarily who they were. And there was just kind of like, and we were together young.
Yeah.
And we created a family young.
That's really insightful too, because I mean, a lot of where your children pick up those patterns from are from their parents.
Yeah.
So if we're not setting that example, that live a free life, but we're not doing it, what are they learning? What are they picking up, right? So, I mean, we're the clear examples of why they didn't fulfill that in a lot of ways. I mean,
I think it was a mixed message. And
Yeah.
I think like it's so funny. One time Dylan, he was super little. He was like 7 and maybe 6. He was still in the car seat. And he's like, I'm never getting married because all wives do are take your stuff and don't let you do what you want. And I was like, whoa, like what? And he's like, yeah, you don't let daddy play video games all the time because he has to go to work. Like in Dylan's mind, George having to go to work was my doing. And not letting him play all the time was my doing. And it was kind of like that was a message, whether it was true or not, which was being sent. And because we didn't we when we would argue in Spanish because our kids don't understand Spanish. And so which meant that we taught him that we tell our kids not to speak a language we speak so that we could fight. um And so they would know when we were upset because obviously everybody feels a vibe when there's issues, but they never saw the conversation or the resolve of the conversation. Everything happened
Mm-hmm.
outside of them. And so we didn't, I don't think like our kids our older two, maybe, okay, I think our oldest, because she was more aware, never really saw like, she saw the dysfunction, I
Mhm.
think, in a marriage. And we thought we were doing better because it was way better than the marriages we were raised in. And then with Dylan, we went to Retrouvaille, and it really saved our marriage because it taught us how to communicate better. Even though it's religious and I'm not religious, it did help. So if you're having issues in your marriage, I really can't recommend Retrouvaille more than it really did save our marriage.
I think it gave us better tools than what we had. I think
When
it
we're
was
raised
just
in, yeah.
yeah, it's just I didn't know, feelings were very foreign to me. So I think we found out very quick how to express those things.
Yeah, but we also found out he's a better communicator than I am. I talk a lot. He communicates more.
And it was, I think through written dialogue, it was clear for me. I think verbally I don't express a lot, but I think through written word, I think it was one of those things where it was just like, I could write pages, and she was like, "Whoa, this is all inside of you. Where is this?"
I know, it was like I didn't get that, but I think after working and then the kids really wanting his time, like, and two, like I'm the kind of person at 3 a.m, like, what are you thinking? What do you and that was just not a great time to ask those questions. Okay, so I think unschooling did affect our marriage in both positive and negative ways. Like negative in the sense of it was all consuming all the time. Like we didn't have alone time. Like we still have a kid that sleeps in our bed.
Mhm.
We've had a kid that slept in our bed since the beginning. So for 20 years almost, like there has been the only reason one kid left, we have always co-slept when they were babies. And then the only reason one left was because another one came in. And even though Logan has his own room, like he's still in our bed.
Mhm.
And I think that kind of has some stuff to do with it, to the extent of feeling like close and being able to be like, you know, spontaneous and stuff. Like, I mean, we found our ways,
So we just get what we get.
but yeah, it has revolved around our kids. So I think in one way it's not just unschooling, it's just the way we've chosen to live and parent our kids or live our lives. But um, I think positively, it's really helped us be individual people, like
Yeah.
be able to accept like who we are, and it's very different than it used to be. I think
Yeah.
it's made our marriage better because we've now like used those same principles towards each other.
Yeah, I think I think in a sense we've prioritized each other's wants a little bit more. It's like where,
Yeah.
I will feel okay doing something for myself and doing something by myself, where, that would be like, wouldn't even be a thought.
I know. It'd be like, I've been home with these kids all day. Like, you're not gonna go golf for an hour. Like, you better come
Or
get your kids.
yeah, right. Now I remember actually coming home. You're home. Oh yeah, they're yours. So, okay. What?
Bye.
What? But I just got off of work. No, but I mean, I understand. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I've tried to be in your shoes.
Yeah.
I've tried.
We did switch roles at
Yeah,
one point
that
where
was-
he was primarily here and I went to work outside the house.
That's going crazy. Like it's just like you do so much, and definitely grateful. and
That was a
thankful.
year, right? Like a
Yeah,
year that we
yeah.
did that. And
Yeah.
that was he was like, how do you manage, like, it's not just what they're into and what they're learning, it's personalities.
Yeah.
And like what they eat. Our kids are super picky eaters, or they were, and they had a lot of dietary issues. And so like he was even just like to the like, why do you gotta make 3 different lunches, and why do you gotta make 3 different dinners, and why do you gotta make
Yeah.
you can't go to one place even if you're going to go out because somebody won't eat there because of how they feel. It just
Yeah.
it was a lot of just managing, and a lot of driving, because we've always not found local unschool community, which we're going to move into that way in a minute. But so we were always driving at least an hour to 2 hours for community, which meant our kids were friends with people usually in different with a commute too. So outside of Park Day, if they wanted to hang out, then we were driving to and from, and all the events. And so that took its toll. Like it's just like a full-time job. I think sometimes when you have multiples or one, and then they're also doing like extra, like when they were doing Krav Maga, or they were doing this, or I was going to school at night, or there was a juggling act happening. And I think when you took that over for the year, I don't think you thought it was easy. Like I was sitting at home eating bonbons while the kids were like, because we have no curriculum, doing whatever the hell they wanted. But there was, I think, like, why isn't the house clean? Or why aren't things getting done? And I'm like, well, because they did clean it, but like they've been in the kitchen like 6 times since the time I cleaned it. Or Dylan used to have extra changes of clothes with him all the time. So there was always laundry. Like he couldn't just wear one outfit all day. It was like 3, and
I remember that. Yeah.
Or Jade was constantly creating and dyeing hair and doing makeup or making cosplay stuff. And so like there was all these moving parts going around that, like, I think when you had it for a year, it was like, whoa, it wasn't as straightforward.
Yeah, a lot of juggling, a lot of being everything there to everyone. So yeah.
Okay. So other than Retrouvaille, what do you think's kept our marriage alive while homeschooling or unschooling?
I think it's actually just I don't know if it's being almost 20 years together, but I mean we're communicating a lot more, and it's almost to the point where I can kind of anticipate needs and wants a little bit more than we were. I think it's also because we're kind of more connected now than we were before, where it's just I can anticipate a little bit more than before,
which is a huge feat because we are the opposite in every sense of the word. which was really cute when we were like first together and we saw the different other side of the coin. But like we look at the sky and I'm like, oh, it's blue. No, it's not. It's red. Or I know that if I like something that I eat, I know that he's gonna hate it. There's rarely anything we like in the same music. Our tastes are different.
Mhm.
The what we like to watch on TV is different. What we like to do on date nights different. Like they're just polar, not even different. Like most of the time, what I like, he doesn't like. Like so that's what he means. Where like he can anticipate where I'm like, we are more willing to do things and do it with a good attitude instead of being like, damn, how long I gotta be here to do this,
Right. I think
right?
that's, yeah, I think that's it. It's just that that perspective has changed a little bit more, where I'm more open to do things that you like, and just just be open to the experience. I think is what it is.
And I'm more willing to do things that I wouldn't not necessarily do. Like I'm more outdoorsy than I used to be.
Right. No, that's,
But that is also direct from camping with a bunch of homeschoolers.
Yeah.
And
Cool.
learning how to be more outdoorsy and dirty. That's just not the way I was before. So I don't know.
I think we're still up to 3 days on your camping trips where you just get stir crazy. Yeah.
Would I stay till 7
Yeah.
or 5? Okay. Okay. How has unschooling affected your career choice or your career?
I think if anything, it's given me more confidence to go after. But we talk about the experience. Tell our kids that we encourage your failure. I mean, I think it for me, it's more risk. Yeah, it's there's things. I mean, I work in IT, so it's there's constantly things that are evolving at such a high pace and such a fast it's such a fast rate. So picking up new knowledge is a constant in this career. I think for me, it's just being able to know or have the confidence that I can pick up something and do it very well.
Yeah, I think like being in a house where like people are constantly learning something or doing something or improving on something or like a lot of open conversation when something isn't working.
Yeah, I think that's I guess trying to get to the process of I think actually when I took our middle son, our older boy, to a job site, and having him watch me work through something, and it was a it was a difficult task. I didn't quite know how to do it, but I figured it out right on that, right towards maybe 20 minutes of just hitting a wall,
Mm-hmm.
but trying to find a different way around it. And I think he was just like, just to have him watch me go through that process was enough to be like, oh, dad does have struggles with figuring things out sometimes, but he's able to both how to figure out a way around it. And I think that was just having him understand that I'm not going to get everything the first time or know everything right away, but there are different ways to get to your answer. And I think that just having him watch that process was enough uh, for him to gain the confidence that he can work at something to get to the right.
And it's good to it also like I know he came home like, oh, dad doesn't know it all and like he can figure it out, I can figure it out.
Right.
And I think there's less because I do see the boys or I think all our kids, our 3 kids, um they still have that wanting to impress us to some extent, especially you when it comes to things that they're into like tech, or whatever it is. And so like um knowledge, I guess, if they're interested in the same thing. Like I'm a neuromuscular therapist and our middle kid was like into wanting to know how to like how the body works and stuff like that. So like there's things that we can talk about and when he knows more information or can have a conversation about like the nerves and muscles and stuff like that, like it, I see him still wanting to like impress me in that sense, right? And like and or want that. I think we all do it.
Yeah.
And so I think like, but when we struggle and they see us struggle, like I think that gives them the confidence too that it's like not we don't know everything. Because my mom used to always say that I know everything. And I used to think that there was an age that I was gonna get to that like I would know everything.
Mhm.
right? And having a kid at 16, you realize, I really thought like, okay, like
Yeah.
at some point I'm going to have all this knowledge and I'm going to know what the hell I'm doing. And it never came. And so I asked her, like, why did you always say that you knew everything? And you're like, I think it was because we lived in a very chaotic life. It was her security. It gave me security to know my mom knew everything so that we were going to be okay.
Mhm.
And I didn't get that till later, but
No, that's
I know, I don't know. Okay. So what's the first thing that comes to mind on this question? Just the first thing, whatever pops in your head. What advice do you have to any parent who's on the fence about unschooling?
get out of your own way. Don't be your own worst enemy. Don't be your kid's worst enemy. Just get out of the way. Let it be something that happens. Don't try to create a, don't try to create something. Just let it sit for a bit and see where it goes. Not completely hands off, but I think be a component of that education. Don't be the leading force for that education. So I think
So like don't impose your own
don't
will.
impose your own
Is that
will.
what you're saying?
No, yeah. I mean, I think I mentioned it earlier. It was, kids are going to be 100% into something. Maybe it's Minecraft, and they're all about Minecraft for like a year or a month or whatever, or 10 seconds. But don't be upset when they want to move on to the next thing, or don't show any interest towards it. Just maybe they're not 100% great at math, or maybe they're not reading till they're 9 or 10. I think it's just, you. I think that comes up a lot in the conversations with dads, in the dads talks. It's just, how are they going to do this? How are they going to do that? I'm scared. I don't know what we're doing. Don't know what I'm doing. My wife brought me into it, and I think there were a few dads that actually have come to um, homeschooling or unschooling, and it's 100% on them, and they're bringing it to the table. So um, there are others with those same experiences and fears. Just don't be the block. Don't be the one that prevents things from happening. Get out of your way.
Because I really believe like when people are not on board or don't want it, it's out of fear and it's out of love. It's out of love of loving, wanting so much for your kids, wanting better than you had, wanting to not take opportunities away, not wanting to be blamed if their kid isn't a go-getter,
Mhm.
isn't the kid that's going to be self-motivated, because not everybody is. Okay. Um, okay, what's one thing that unschooling did for our family that you did not expect?
Um, I did not expect it to open me up so much to finding myself in a lot of ways. I feel like the journey that we took, not only for our children to kind of find out who they truly are and who they're meant to be, it was also a journey on my own to fulfill myself and my needs and my wants. And I think it definitely made me more of a genuine person and true to myself. It's I think it's just those experiences that I've had with watching them go through life, kind of has empowered me to be uh, to be a better parent, to be a um, better facilitator, better person, just really just overall better me. So yeah, that's one of those things where I feel like I've been able to be me, really. That's,
Okay, last question. How has unschooling changed the way you parent versus the way you were parented?
Um, be more available. To be more available, I think is, I had two parents that were just, you know, always just, were busy. They were very busy, and it was more of a be seen, not heard situation in my home, where you know, as a kid, we really didn't have input as to what we what we had choice to eat or what we had choice to do. Or, you know, I remember if I wanted to get to my baseball practice, sometimes my mother would do the best to get me there. But then there were times I'd have to ride a bike, 5 or 10 miles both ways just to get to practice. I'd get there late and I'd get in trouble, or, but I mean, those are things that I feel like, I don't. I think we facilitate for our children so much, um, because I want to make up for the times that I didn't have, or that I didn't have with my parents. I didn't have that available parent, and I think their children, they have two available parents, so it makes it that much more of an experience. Um, yeah, it's definitely this. You have to be ready with whether you homeschool or unschool. And sometimes it's at the drop of a hat. But that's something that I'm willing to do, and this journey has definitely made it possible, and I'm grateful for it.
I think like you're a very affectionate dad. Like you're a very encouraging dad. You're very in a lot of ways I see you be the dad you wish you had.
Yeah.
To an extent, like instead of not having the excuse that I know that a lot of people in my life have, like, well, nobody was that for me, so how am I supposed to be that? Um, and I think because we've been very honest with our kids about the way we were raised, like they know that you don't have to have something to be that. And I
Well,
see that do it for other people in our like other our nephews or our nieces, like you're the or friends, like you're the father figure.
yeah, I think that's a cop out though. It's just because you never saw it or never experienced doesn't mean you don't know what better is, right? You can be better, you can do better. But I mean, to just say, oh, I've never had it, so I don't know what it is. And come on, it's just like we live in a society where you know the difference between good or bad or healthy and unhealthy, and to make
I think
this.
sometimes it's for some people like it's all confused, right? Like what's been normalized, you may have not liked it, but you don't know how to do different, or you do what you like. I always tell people like when I was raising Jade, like at 16, uh, there are certain things I knew I didn't want to like perpetuate
Mm-hmm.
the way I was raised. But when you're exhausted and tired and on your last string, like sometimes you do what is normal.
You do what you know.
You do what you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think choosing, even though we've both worked, like when it it was still barely making ends meet in the beginning,
Mm-hmm.
right? And like with finances and kids and other extra stuff that, family of origin stuff, like it makes it difficult. And so I think sometimes like I don't think it's necessarily always a cop out. I think sometimes it's like you do better when you know better, but sometimes there's not people in your life to show you better or to know like, okay, I want to do this, but I don't know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And some people won't step on the ledge to be in case they fall off of it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Back down. So I don't know. I kind of see like the way you've raised the kids, like you don't yell, you don't hit, you don't belittle. You are always there to be the yes. Like I always joke, like after the kids ask for the moon, you'd figure out how to go get it. But it's not just to appease them, it's to like you don't minimize their interests.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like you always, if they want a dual disc. If they're into Pokemon, it's not like that's stupid and it's not going to make you money and like don't spend your time on that. That's like, okay, well, let's get into it. Like, what do you like about it? But it's tied to things you wouldn't necessarily consider educational. So one thing I've noticed in the way you raise the kids is that, and maybe it's the unschooling way that we've kind of already applied, like life, like there is no difference between, right now we're using the word unschooling and homeschooling because we're doing a podcast. But this is our life. Like, I don't think we have divided things into subjects or this is real life and this is pretend life. It's kind of all been one big world that we live in. Thank you for being here with us and being very open. The whole point of this podcast is to show a bi-POC experience of homeschooling and unschooling, to start changing the narrative of who homeschools and what it looks like. So your social proof of reviews is how other homegirls are going to find us. And so please go on to wherever you listen to a podcast and rate us, and leave any questions or feedback at our website, homeschoolingHomegirls.com.
Want to talk about homeschooling and unschooling in between episodes? Follow us on Instagram at Homeschooling Homegirls. Enjoy the process of raising empowered people.